The Mediterranean, the first sea in history to be used in the transport of international trade. Hundreds of vessels pass in the Mediterranean. It witnesses the most intense and active traffic of giant oil tankers. Several oil and natural gas exploration and production companies operate in the Mediterranean. The main maneuver Misr al-Mahrousa 9. Damietta port was chosen to conduct the joint maneuver due to the following. It is located on the Mediterranean, within the scope of work of the main oil pollution combating center in Alexandria, and to reach the optimum benefit from the available capabilities of Petrosafe Company and Damietta Port Authority for the protection of marine environment. The emergency room in Alexandria Center received a notification from Petrosafe Emergency Room concerning a report from the emergency room of the Egyptian Environmental Affairs Agency of an oil spill in the waiting area of Damietta, moving towards the port. The quantity of the oil spilled is estimated with about 300 tons of light crude oil. As soon as the notification was received, the readiness condition of the centers of Petrosafe Company in Alexandria, Suez, Ras Gharib, Hurghada, Tibin, Aswan, and El Tour was raised. The condition was assessed by the operations manager of Petrosafe Company, the manager of Alexandria Center, and the general manager of the Rescue and Environment Department in Damietta Port. The results of the simulation program proved that the oil spill is moving towards Damietta Port. Upon the arrival of the means of transport, the equipment were loaded to be directed as soon as possible to the accident site in Damietta Port. Upon the arrival of the equipment and personnel to Damietta Port and the completion of their access permission into the customs area of the port. A joint emergency room was established in Damietta Port in order to manage the accident. After holding a safety meeting including all the personnel participating in the combat processes in the operations area, the work started immediately through two groups. The first group, the offshore group, is responsible for the containment and recovery of oil and the containment and recovery of small oil spills spread on the water area inside the port. While the second group, the onshore group, is responsible for the containment and recovery of oil spread around the berths, washing and cleaning the berths, tugs, service launches that were polluted by oil. The first group started by loading the combat pollution equipment on the maritime units. Then departed towards the oil spill outside the port, and during this time the combat personnel prepared their equipment to start the combat operations upon the arrival to the spill area. At the same time, the second group prepared the oil recovery and berth washing equipment that they will use on the berths. Upon the arrival of the maritime units to the spill area of the port entrance, they used the rubber barriers or booms to contain the oil. And upon the arrival of the maritime unit operating with the second group on shore, they started to use the rubber barriers or booms to contain the oil existing on berths. As soon as the offshore group completes the installation of rubber barriers to contain the spilled oil, they started to use the brush skimmers. The recovered oil are collected in 2 floating rubber tanks with capacity up to 5 tons, tugged by the maritime units. As soon as the onshore group completes the installation of rubber barriers to contain the spilled oil, they start to use the alligator system that consists of 2 groups of skimmers. A built-in skimmer called weir skimmer used to recover the heavy oils, and the second a brush skimmer used to recover the light and medium oils. The operation and control of both skimmers is done using remote control, and the recovered oil are collected in rubber tanks installed on the berth. The offshore group requested a maritime unit to be available in the operations area outside the port to tug the rubber floating tank after being filled. This is to drive it to the recovered oil reception berth. The maritime unit tugged the rubber floating tank to the recovered oil reception terminal, and the onshore group moored the tank and linked it to the oil reception pipe to discharge the oil it contains. Then the maritime unit comes back with rubber floating tank empty to the combat area. The onshore group requested a vehicle to recover the oil collected in the rubber tank and discharge it in the drainage of the liquid wastes reception facility. The onshore group washes the oil-polluted berths using steam jet that removes oil residues and in the same time recovers the washing resulting from operation using alligator system. The onshore group also washes the maritime units that contaminated with oil, polluted tugs and the launches of the port using steam jet. In the same time, it recovers the washing resulting from operation using mini-max system, and the recovered oil is collected in the rubber onion tank. To handle the small oil spills spread on the port's water surface and recover them, the first group, the offshore group, uses the Maritime Combat Unit affiliated to Damietta Port called Tathir 3. It also uses Tathir 2. The recovered oils are stored in the recovery tanks of these units, and when they are filled, the launch goes to the liquid wastes reception berth to discharge the recovered oils. After verifying the completion of the sea and berth compact operations, the emergency room of PetroSafe issued instructions concerning the end of operation and the return of staff and equipment to the 7 centers of the company. The working group on shore and at sea removed their equipment from water to go back to the center. The assessors held a conference on the margin of the accident in order to assess the maneuver and detect the positive and negative aspects and the lesson learned. By the end of the assessors conference, the main training maneuver, Misr Mahrousa 9, is completed.